What's up YouTube, this is Ringo from TOK, and today we are going to go through question number 5 from the TOK 2018 question. So, if you guys want to contact me, remember to hit me up on the contact information, which is contact.edsphere@gmail.com, and I do offer, essay draft checking, these sort of stuff, so do email me if you want to know, if you want to find out more. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So, question 5. This is one of those questions that I actually personally think it's quite fun. It's actually quite fun and it's quite nice question. So the question, and this is going to be a relatively longer video because there's much more to touch on. I quite like this question. So, the quality of knowledge produced by the academic discipline is directly proportional to the duration of historical development of that discipline. Whew, that's a mouthful. Explore this claim with reference to discipline. Okay, so let's get right into it, but let's think. The first word I want to draw your attention to is the word quality. Well, what does quality mean? So I define quality in 3 aspects. Just randomly define it in 3 aspects. The first one is if a knowledge is of good quality, then it could have a monetary or a value to that knowledge. So that could represent the quality of knowledge. The validity, the accuracy, how correct, how right the knowledge is could also demonstrate quality. Because good quality is correct, it's just right, it's the answer kind of thing. Acceptability. Quality, a good knowledge, knowledge with good quality should be accepted by the majority. Could state that. I mean, why would a majority accept a knowledge? Well, because it's of good quality. That's why everyone thinks that they're going to accept it. So that could be an approach. Alright, so that's the first half. Not the first half, the first part. The second part, produce. So we're not talking about acquisition of acquisition of knowledge, but we're looking at the production of knowledge. Academic discipline. I'm just going to highlight that because I'm going to go, actually, let's just talk about it. Academic discipline is different from areas of knowledge. Don't get this mixed up, guys, because here it says we have to give reference to 2 academic discipline. So why did they use the word discipline and not areas of knowledge like the other question? Well, because you can compare discipline within the same areas of knowledge. So that is an approach you can take. Why would they allow you to do that is my question. Well, the thing is this. If you are comparing between 2 things from 2 different areas of knowledge, it's very difficult to compare, let's say, a calculator to a pen. It just doesn't make sense because, the ways of knowing you use, how we produce knowledge can be very different from these 2 different areas of knowledge. And actually the discipline of 2 very different areas of knowledge. So instead of them trying to ask you to compare between 2 areas of knowledge, you compare between 2 disciplines. How does this calculator in this discipline differ from this calculator? And they are both from the same area of knowledge. Yeah, so that just happens to be lying around. So how does that even work? Well, that's for you to think about. The next word, I love this word. Directly proportional. Oh. So in math, have you guys learned directly proportional? Yeah. So like y is proportional to x. You've also learned that y can be inversely proportional to x. You could also learn that y is not proportional to x. Okay, this is a number of things. So how do we interpret this? Well, imagine we have time here. Time. So this represents the historical background. And the other axis, we have quality of knowledge. So in a direct proportional, as history and time increase, quality increase. Direct proportional. Okay, keep that in mind. What if it is another one? Let's get a different color. So if it is inversely proportional, as time increases, quality can decrease. It's very interesting. What if it is not proportional at all? As time increases, knowledge goes like this, and then it fluctuates, go around, go down, like a roller coaster, like the one we did on question 2. What about now? So here we try to target at the word directly proportional. We have to show evidence that the relationship between the historical background or the historical duration and the academic discipline is not or is directly proportional. The next word I want you guys to be very, very careful about. Duration. What does duration mean? Duration means time. The longer the time, the longer the duration. What it does not mean is amount. So here's the question. The longer the time that discipline has been developing, in theory, we should have more knowledge. In theory, we should have more knowledge. And rather than the amount of resource we put in. But if you argue it that way, that's wrong. Because we're not comparing between the amount of resource. So most students look at duration will look at the time, the duration in time. But the different approach is not the duration of the time, but the amount of the time. Be very careful. That's two different things. You can be a 17-year-old who study 8 hours a day, and that in the time frame of that 17 years, you accumulated, I don't even know how many hours of study. But a smarter friend of yours, same 17 year in terms of the duration of the time, but the amount of time they spent within this duration of 17 years on studying could be 12 hours a day. So how are we going to measure duration? Are we going to measure duration in the hours spent or the time lapsed? So you have to be very, very careful on this one. The reason being that the hours of study you can measure, but how do you measure the amount of time study within a discipline? I mean, there are a bajillion scientists actually. No, there's like a lot of scientists, each contributing to different amount of time in that discipline. So how does that work? Really don't know. And I mean, in recent years, there's much more different fields like psychology, for the past 100 years, economics. The duration is much shorter, but a lot of people are going into the field, that discipline, and putting their time in. But those times you can't measure them. But it doesn't mean they don't exist. So you have to be very careful and cautious when you're defining this word duration. A lot of students will, and I promise you, they will just simply see it as, chemistry has been around for 1,000 years. Astronomy has been over 5,000 years. So, these sort of stuff. But, you have to go deeper. The duration of historical development doesn't just mean time. So, that was a mouthful. So, let's get down to the nitty-gritty stuff. So, the ideas I want you guys to know is that different academic discipline differs, like I said. So, maybe in the field of history, over time we discover more pieces of the puzzle, hence it is proportional. You could just simply argue it like that. Or you could also talk about like scientific discovery. We've been pretty stagnated. Why am I even showing you on a pen when you guys are looking at my screen? While like a lot of the stuff are very stagnant, and then it has a exponential growth. Talk about astronomy. People has been staring at the stars for like, I don't even know how long, maybe 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 years. Who knows? When did we first start to send things to the moon, to the orbit, to satellite? It's not until the 1950s we did that. So I think the Soviet was the first one to send a satellite out into space. I forgot the name of that satellite. Google that. And then, people sending things to the moon. And then, basically, that space race between Russia and USA had a huge growth in around 1950. And then they have the moon landers. And I think that Soviets has 24 lunar lander. And then the US has the Apollo mission. And then what? And then we stopped. Then, no one touched the moon, and we're kind of like that for pretty much between, I don't know, 1990, I guess, and that we're pretty much that. I mean, we're still sending things to Mars, to stuff, but that's pretty much it. And a lot of the stuff that was sent, like the Voyager 1, Voyager 2, they were actually sent back in the 70, 80. So, I mean, they're still going, but, they were sent back then. So, that's the logic. Not every discipline agrees with this idea of directional proportional. Directly proportional. So we need to be able to understand that. And the question, I love this question because the question asks you to explore. So you don't have to focus on the word agree or disagree. You just need to show perspective. You need to be able to show perspective of both sides. There are times when it is proportional, and there are times when it is not. So overall, you could say that it is not proportional. That's it. That is very simple. You could say that they go in the same direction. Over time, we do discover more ideas, but then whether that is proportional, it's really up to that discipline. So the counter argument is that can there be a discipline that has that's more directly proportional about the knowledge? Is there a discipline that knowledge is proportional with time? What about music? I think music is quite an interesting one. I mean, there are composers, there are songs, there are music, but the amount of music, the knowledge in music, is it even growing? I mean, there's more composer composing songs of different genre, but to me personally, I think that it's growing at a very, very gradual rate. People back then make music, and then you get the classical period, the Baroque period, the classical period, the romantic period, that's it. And then you get the Debussy stuff. You do develop more and more genre of music, but is there a music explosion? It's debatable. I mean, you could argue that there is a pop culture or the pop music explosion. You could talk about the electric music explosion, but I think that it's relatively stable through time. I mean, people don't discover new knowledge about music on on the daily. It's unlike science. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So what other thoughts are there? Well, is there? Scientific breakthrough. There are many scientific breakthrough, and I think that those breakthrough disrupt the idea of directly proportional. But what if it is like a regular breakthrough? So most likely something along the line of mathematics, these sort of stuff. They were quite regular. A majority of the time. So it's very hard to say, and I think it's very hard to find some counterclaim to it. Think of it in the discipline of history, for example. We've learned history for so long. Does it mean that we produce a lot of knowledge? No, there's many missing parts of the puzzle which kind of hinders that, or there are puzzles which there's no pieces left or found yet to be put in. So we don't know. Who knows? So lastly, try to include some ways of knowing to how individual might contribute more, meaning that it is not directly proportional and it does not follow a linear constant, but rather a direction. So that is my little personal take-home message for this question, because I find that it is very difficult to talk about the counterclaim of this question. Don't get me wrong, you do have to argue some sort of counterclaim, but the nature of the word explore this claim suggests that what perspective you can look at on this question doesn't necessarily have to be a complete counterclaim. And like I said earlier about the duration, I haven't actually put a point which accounts for the amount of time that each individual put in rather than the span over millions of years or thousands of years. So that could be another direction that you're going into. So I think that this question, it's very good if you are someone who is very solid-minded, meaning that you have an idea, you want to sell out that idea, and you're a relatively smarter student, and I think that you can handle this question quite easily, just depending on how you define it, and make sure that you don't you don't try to forcefully put a counterclaim into this question, or you don't forcefully try to put a claim to claim that it is directionally proportional. So the claim, if I have to argue for this question, I would say that in some discipline it's more directly proportional than others. I can use the idea of relativism in this, or I could say that during specific time of era, that directly proportional actually is aligned, but at other times is not directly proportional. You could talk about that. So those are some approaches you can take to this question. So let me know if you guys have any question. When to how to contact me, and that's pretty much it. So stay tuned for question 6. This is Ringo from TOK. Peace out for now.